Good morning, Mr. Maybeck. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Chairperson.
Good morning, Chairperson.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, Mr. Singh.
Thank you.
I thought I had to push you guys.
Chairperson, we indebted for the time. I think we've resolved some of the issues, but at this stage,
Yes.
to save time, I think we can proceed. If any issues arise in between,
Yes.
we'll deal with it.
Okay, no,
Thank
that's
you,
fine.
Chairperson.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Chairperson, as you're aware, today is scheduled for the continuation of the evidence of Mr. Singh within the Transnet stream.
Yes. Okay, please administer the oath of affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
Anoj Singh?
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No.
Do you consider the oath binding on your conscience?
Yes, I do.
Do you solemnly swear that the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you. You may be seated, Mr. Singh.
Chairperson, the documents that are of particular relevance to Mr. Singh's evidence are contained in Transnet Bundle 5B and 5C. That is Exhibit BB 23.
Okay, all right. And I've got 5C, so I guess that's the one you start with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Singh, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Could I ask you, please, you have these two bundles, I take it, in front of you. Could you turn to Bundle 5C and go to page 1750,
We're using the black operator.
the black numbers, yes.
15?
1750.
And this, sir.
Now, you will recall that at the last sitting of your evidence, you contended that witness 3 had been spoon-fed information about Knox Vault by someone within the commission, and that is how he came to say that he took you there. You recall that evidence?
Yes, miss.
Now, what you find at page 1750 and further is an affidavit of Esaias Leonard. He is an investigator at the Commission. And if I could take you to paragraph 8 at page 1752, he makes reference to your evidence at paragraphs 8, 9, and 10. And he explains then that he provided this affidavit in that context. Could I ask you please to turn to page 1753? You will see there at paragraph 12 that Mr. Leonard says that as part of an ongoing investigation procedure performed at Transnet, he interviewed various drivers or CPOs who were assigned to protect and transport members of Transnet executive management team during the period 2009 to 18. He then says at paragraph 13 that on 29 April he interviewed witness 3 for the first time. He says at paragraph 14 that witness 3 informed us that he served as a driver and CPO for Mr. Singh while being the GCFO of Transnet, commencing in July 2014 until his secondment to Eskom. Then at 15, Mr. Leonard says that in addition to other matters witness 3 informed us about, he told us that on 6 or 7 occasions after visits to the Gupta residence, Mr. Singh would instruct him to drive to Knox Vault across the road from the Kalani Mall. According to witness 3, Mr. Singh would take the bag that he collected from the Gupta residence, in brackets, which he suspected contained cash, from the boot of the vehicle and go into the Knox Vault building. Mr. Singh would return to the vehicle and witness 3 would notice that the bag was now empty. He informed us that he suspected that Mr. Singh had deposited the contents in a safe at Knox Vault. Paragraph 16, it was during this interview with witness 3 that anyone within or from the Commission first became aware of Knox Vault and Mr. Singh's visits to Knox Vault. 17, witness 3 subsequently deposed to an affidavit setting out the above-mentioned facts. So that was an interview on the 29th of April 2019. Mr. Leonard goes on to say that based on the first consultation with witness 3, the Commission issued a summons to Knox Vault on 13 June 2019, in terms of which Knox Vault were required to provide the Commission with records and documents relating to the rental of safety deposit boxes by specific individuals. Mr. Singh was among the individuals whose records were summoned. Paragraph 19, on 20 June, Knox Vault complied with the summons and produced the following customer records for Mr. Singh, and they then listed as access records, in brackets, customer visits, application form, additional box forms, tax invoices, cancellation form, credit note, and identification document. Over the page, Mr. Leonard goes on to say that the records received from Knox Vault are attached here to marked Annexure EPL 1. According to the access records, in brackets, customer visits, Mr. Singh visited Knox Vault on 22 occasions between July 2013 and August 2017. 10 of these visits fall within the period that witness 3 served as driver/CPO for Mr. Singh. 22, as mentioned above, witness 3 stated during the first interview with him on 29 April 2019 that he had escorted Mr. Singh to Knox Vault on approximately 6 or 7 occasions during this period. And then Mr. Leonard, with reference to the evidence that you had given before, says at paragraph 23 in conclusion, the legal issue that attracted media attention, which I assume Mr. Singh was referring to in his evidence, arose from the execution of a summons issued by the Commission in terms of which it took custody of safe deposit boxes rented by Kubun Mudli at Knox Vault. The execution of the summons occurred on 25 June 2019, more than 2 months after witness 3 informed us about Knox Vault on 29 April 2019. You see that?
I do so.
Have you got any reason to question the truth and accuracy of this affidavit of Mr. Leonard?
Not at this stage.
So, what then would you say to the proposition that the only way that witness 3 could have known about your safe deposit boxes at Knox Vault is if he took you there, as he alleges?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure how witness 3 came to know about the boxes, but as I've testified before, Mr. Chair, witness 3 has never taken me to Knox Vault on any occasion.
Shall I take that as meaning that you are saying you accept that he got to know about it, but you don't know how he knew about it, because as far as you are concerned, he never took it?
Mr. Chair, that is correct, because as you would see in the affidavit itself, Mr. Chair, I was not the only person that formed the content of the subpoena.
Yes.
There were other people that actually were also, information was requested from Knox Vault. So it would seem that maybe through that process, people had got to know about it.
Yeah.
So I would accept your proposition.
Mr. Maiba,
So, Mr. Singh, I'm not sure that I follow your answer. I mean, last time you said that, and you must correct me if I'm wrong, last time I understood you to say that witness 3 came to learn about this because it was planted, the information, by a member of the commission. Now you accept that that's not true. So how is it then that witness 3 knows of your facility at Knoxvold, unless he took you there?
Mr. Chair, if we have regard to the information that's presented to us today, all of this information was available to the Commission on the day that my evidence was laid. Yet none of this information was made available to me.
How does that affect your answer?
No, well, Mr. Chair,
Because
that's what I'm trying to...
Because you either know what the position is or how witness 3 would have come to know about the information relating to you and Knoxvold, or you don't know. Whether you were shown information or not is not going to affect what you knew.
No, but that's what I'm trying to get to, Mr. Chair, is
Yeah.
that on the day that I testified, I did not know.
What did you not know?
I did not know that the information relating to the investigator's report came to the attention of the investigator on the 29th of April 2019,
Yes.
for example,
Yes.
because I was not presented with anything relating to Knoxvold.
Yes.
So
Is that why you gave the answer you gave? Because you didn't know that?
Because I was asked, how did he come to know? So
Because you were denying.
yes. So I then
Yes.
preferred or provided an explanation
Yes.
that I thought was relevant at the time.
But you accept now, do you not, that explanation you provided, namely of accusing somebody within the commission to have planted the information or given him that information to implicate you, do you now accept that that's not true?
That is correct, sir.
Yes. Okay. So as I understand it, the position you are in is you have denied that witness 3 took you to Knoxvold. The evidence that you also accept suggests that he must have taken you there, but, or at least he knows information that he would have known if he had taken you there. But your position is he didn't take you there, and you can't say how he came to know the information.
That is correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, Chairperson. Now, Mr. Singh, previously when you testified, I asked you, this is at page 64 of the transcript of 12 March, day 360. I said, what were you keeping in these 4 boxes? And your answer was, Mr. Chair, the 4 boxes is easy to explain. There was a box for each one of the family, sorry, each one of the members of the family. You recall giving that evidence?
Along those lines, yes.
I beg your pardon?
Along those lines, yes, Chair.
I'm reading from the transcript. So as I understand it, the 4 members of the family were you, your wife, and your 2 children.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Now, in 2014, your children were aged, on my calculations, your eldest child was 12 and your youngest child was 4.
In 2014, that
Yeah.
would probably be right, yes.
Approximately.
Yes.
So what is it that you stored in the 2 boxes for your children?
Chair, don't recall right now, but it could have been documents for them, gifts for them, jewelry for them, odds and sods, I don't really recall.
Documents for them? Like?
Birth certificates, so ID
Okay,
documents.
please speak up, Mr.
Sorry,
Singh.
birth certificates, ID documents, and the like. But Mr. Chair, these are personal, these are issues that relate to my personal being at the time. I don't see the relevance for that in this.
Well, what you kept in the boxes is obviously relevant, Mr. Singh. You know that. You surely know that what you kept in the boxes is relevant because there are allegations of you taking money from the Guptas and taking it to Knox Vault. So you say you didn't take any money, any cash from the Guptas and kept it at Knox Vault. You indicated what you kept in those boxes, but if the other version is true, you may have kept money that you got from the Guptas in the boxes, isn't it?
That is true, Mr. Chair.
Yes, so it's highly relevant. Mr. Mybeck?
Thank you. And you then went on to explain that, as I understood it, you'd keep some jewelry for your wife, and you also said that you might keep, or you did keep cash for yourself to a maximum value, as I recall evidence, of 100,000 rand.
I think the number was between 100 to 200. I think it's
Between 100 and?
200.
Between 100 and 200. And that money you say you got, if my memory serves me correctly, from moonlighting and gambling.
Well, moonlighting was your suggestion.
Well, that's the term that is commonly used when an executive in a position such as you does private work on the side.
Okay, if that's the way it's. Yeah.
That's how you got the money.
That is
Gambling and moonlighting.
correct. That is correct.
Well, what we do know from the records is that you didn't have 4 boxes, you had 8 boxes. You would have seen that.
That is correct.
So let's go to page 1758. So let's,
Sorry, the page number again?
1758. And before I get into the records, so how does one square this with your previous evidence? Would you now say that you had 2 vaults or boxes for each family member?
No, Mr. Chair. I think I also did mention in the previous testimony that I also used the boxes to store documents and stuff that was of relevance to me at the time. So the balance of the boxes were really to store documents that were relevant to me.
Well, Mr. Mybeck's question is, since when you gave your evidence, you said you kept 4 boxes because the family consisted of 4 members.
Yeah.
How do you now explain the fact that there were not 4 boxes, there were 8 boxes? Mr. Mybeck, did I get your question right?
Yes,
Yes.
Chairperson.
So what's the explanation for having so many boxes, much more than double the number of the family members?
Mr. Chair, as I would recall again from the testimony that I had given at the time, I did say I do not recall the number of boxes that I actually had.
Sorry, just repeat.
I said I do not recall the exact number of boxes that I had at the time. Mm-hmm. Because remember, when I had given evidence, the issue of Knox Vault was not put to us.
Was not what?
Was not put to us. Was not put to me, sorry.
There was a discussion of Knox Vault. What do you mean it was not put to you?
No, there was discussions relating to Knox Vault that emanated from my testimony at the time. Mm-hmm. Based on witness 3's testimony.
Yes.
But the detail relating to Knox Vaults in terms of the information that you see before you today didn't exist on the day that I testified. So when I testified, I was testifying from memory.
You are testifying from?
From memory.
Yes.
So hence when you asked how many boxes do you have, I said I think I had approximately 4 boxes.
Mr. Mybeck?
Yes, thank you. All right, well, you said you had approximately 4, but it turns out you had twice the number.
Taken, point taken.
All right, then let's go to page 1758. What you will see, it's quite useful, the handwritten annotations at the top. You count there are 8 boxes. Those were the numbers of the boxes, correct?
That's
So let's have a look at how this unfolded. If you go to page 1759, you'll see that this is the first box that you acquired, and it was a transaction that was effected on the 12th of February 2013. And you'll see there at page 1759, in the middle of the page,
I'm sorry, Mr. Mybeck, where do you see the date?
the date, DCJ, is 1760 at the bottom under Mr. Singh's
Oh, yes,
signature.
okay.
That's 12 February 2013.
Yes,
It's a little obscure, but it will become clear from the next document.
Yes, no, now I can see it now.
So we'll become familiar with these documents as we go along, because there's a series of them that are the same. But at 1759, at paragraph 8, you will agree that it reflects then that you acquired a small safe box on that day. Is that correct?
That is correct. Sorry,
Uh,
sir, that is correct.
And what we see is you made an annual cash payment. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you will then find the invoice at page 1761. There you will see the invoice is dated 12 February 2013. You made a refundable key deposit, and then you rented the small safety deposit box rental, and you paid 2,700 Rand. Was that for the year?
That is correct.
And you paid that in cash?
That is correct.
We then go to the second transaction. Now that you find at page 1763. This is now on the 8th of May 2014. You acquired a large box, correct? That's reflected at 1763.
1763.
Number 1424, and you will see at 1764, on the same day, you acquired box number 1425, another large box. And in fairness to you, I've looked at these documents quite carefully. What happened is that you upgraded the small box to a large box, and then you rented another large. Do you recall that?
I don't recall that, but if that is what you say, Mr. Mybeck.
Well, let me explain it to you. If you go to page 1765, which is the invoice relevant to you acquiring these boxes, you see that it says the second line, large safety deposit box rental, and then upgrade, S to L, presumably small to large. You see that?
Yeah, I do. I do.
So that is May 2014. Then in the next month, June 2014, and this is at page 1766, you then rented another large box. You confirm that on the 9th of June 2014.
I do.
And the invoice you find over the page at 1767, you paid 4,900 Rand and 19 cents, again in cash. Correct?
That is correct.
Then the next transaction was 2 months later, in August 2014. You find this at page 1768. This time you rented another large box, and now you had 4. Correct?
That is correct.
And you again paid annually in cash. Is that right?
From 1768, that's evident.
Page 1768, it reflects annual cash.
Yes.
Did you pay in cash?
Yes, sir.
And then if you go over the page 1769, you see the invoice. Again, you paid an amount of 4,900 Rand and 19 cents. Is that correct?
That is good.
Now, the fifth transaction occurred 2 months later in August 2014. Could I ask you, please, documents are out of sequence. Could I ask you to turn this time to page 1774? So we have dealt with the transaction on the 1st of August 2014. At 1774, there was a second transaction in August 2014, this time on the 15th of August. You see that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And now you acquired another large box 2 weeks or so later. Is that right?
Yes.
Again, you paid annually in cash,
That is correct.
and you find the invoice at page 1775. And sorry, I'm incorrect. In fact, on this day, you acquired 2 boxes. You go back to 1774, you'll see there large number required 2. You see that?
That is correct.
And that's why the invoice, again, settled in cash is much larger, this time for 9,160 Rand and 8 cents. You see that?
That is correct.
So you now had 6 large boxes. Correct?
That is correct.
We could now go to the 6th transaction, and that you find at page 1770.
177.
This occurred 2 months later in October of 2014. And here you'll see that this time you upgraded to an extra large box. You see that?
So 1770.
1770.
Yes, sir.
You acquired this time an extra large box to go with your 6 large boxes. You see that?
That is correct.
Again, you paid in cash,
That is correct.
and it cost you 6,008 Rand. Correct?
That is correct.
So now you had 6 large boxes and 1 extra large box. And then the next transaction you find at 1772, and this occurred in the next year, 9th of February 2015. And this time you acquired for yourself an extra large box. You see that?
That is correct.
And again, you paid in cash.
That is correct.
This time you were given a 20% discount. Correct?
That is correct.
Why were you being given discount?
Sorry, sir.
Do you know why you were being given discounts?
No, sir. I guess I don't.
Not perhaps because you were a very good customer.
That could be.
Right. Then you see at page 1773 that for that extra large box, you paid in cash 6,740 Rand and 1 cent. So that is February 2015. Then if I can ask you please to go to page 1776, we see that what happens here,
1777.
1776, is that in August 2017, you then effectively cancel your facility, correct?
That is correct.
and you return the keys, and you undertake that you no longer require the boxes.
That is,
And then what happens, and perhaps not particularly relevant, is the documents that follow at 1770 and 1778, etc., they then credit notes, where you returned the keys, you were credited, and presumably you were credited because there were pro rata credits affected. Is that correct?
that is good.
Now, Mr. Singh, I just want to hand up. I'm going to ask you to go to the access records or customer record, visit record at page 1757. Are you there?
That is good.
With your leave, Chairperson, could I just hand up a copy of that page with certain handwritten annotations that I've made, which will facilitate my examination of Mr. Singh? I do apologize for the handwriting, but it will.
No, that's fine.
It should help everyone.
That's fine. Thank you.
Is this part of the bundle?
It's annotations made on page 1757. I'll give you a copy. What I've done here, Mr. Singh, is on the left-hand side, you will see that I've boxed in your name. That boxing reflects the time that you were employed at Transnet. On the right-hand side, there's another boxing running from 14 July 2018 up until 20 March 2015. That's the time that witness 3 said that he worked for you. So that's that boxing. And then,
What's the date with the rights?
on the right-hand side, from 18 July 2014 through to 20 March 2015.
I think what you call boxing on mine.
When I mean boxing, I've just drawn a line.
Yes, no, now I see, 20 March.
Yes,
Yes, no, now I thought it was the one above that. No.
thank you.
Okay, so that's 20 March 2015 up to 18 July 2014. Is that right?
Witness 3 says that he worked as Mr. Singh's driver. The dates that fall within that range are from 18 July 2014 until 9 February 2015, DCJ. In the middle column.
Yes, I'm looking at the middle column. Is the first date in the middle column where you have boxed? Is the first date 20 March 2015?
Yes, it is.
Is the last date within the box 18 July 2014?
Yes, it is. I'm sorry, I was reading it the other way around that
Yes,
I started with. But yes,
okay,
hopefully I think we are on the same page.
Yeah,
here.
okay, no, that's all right. Okay.
So then, Mr. Singh, what I've done at the bottom of the middle column is I've got small. You acquired that box on the 12th of February 2013. I put an asterisk because we know that it was then converted. Now I want to follow the highlighting. So on the first pink highlight, on the 8th of May 2014, you now acquire 2 large boxes. You upgrade the small, you get a large. That's in May of 2014. You then visit that facility twice, again in May, and then in June, you acquire another large box. You visit the facility again in June and July. 2 months later, in August, you acquire another large box, correct? On the 1st of August 2014. You confirm that?
Sorry, on the first, yes.
And then we know 2 weeks later, on the 15th of August 2014, you acquire 2 more large boxes. Correct?
This
And
is
then-
you, sorry, Mr. Chair. This is you cross-referencing this dates with
Yes.
these documents.
Yes. And then 2 months later, so you visit the facility, you get, in the month of August, you actually acquire 3 large boxes. You visit the facility in September, and then in October, you get your extra large box. Correct?
Oh, that's it.
That 11 October.
Yes.
Okay.
And then you visit the facility in November twice and December. And then early in the next year, you now get an extra large box. You see that?
That is correct.
Now, I want to just ask you, presumably,
Oh, Mr. Myberg, I've been wondering why I seem to lose you. The numbers have not been written in the normal sequence. The earlier months in the year are at
yes,
the bottom.
it's the other way around. Yeah.
Yes.
So the year comes first.
Yeah. Well, that's fine, but one expects that when you get a document like this and it gives you dates, you expect that the earlier date would be at the top.
Yes.
Then you go down. This is the other way around.
It's the other way, yes.
Yes.
In other words, the document builds up. It reflects at the bottom the first time that Mr. Singh went there, and at the top the last time he went there.
Yes, yes.
So, Mr. Singh, I just wanted to, presumably on these days, when you acquired these boxes, you had with you the things that you wanted to store in them.
That would be a reasonable assumption, but I don't recall.
So can you remember what caused you in May of 2014 to get 2 large boxes?
Mr. Chair, maybe I don't recall the exact reasons as to why these events occurred or why these boxes increased each and every single, let's call it, highlighted item. But Mr. Chair, again, as I indicated previously, the contents of these boxes related to personal items, documents, and effects. During this period of time, Mr. Chair, again, as it relates to my personal affairs, my ex-wife and I were going through a separation process. So, to the extent that I needed to move stuff from my residence at the time, this was then placed in these boxes.
So in August of 2014, when you take another 2 boxes, can you remember why you did that?
Well, Mr. Chair, as I said, in terms of the exact nature of why these occurred, I don't recall why that happened in August 2014 or October 2014, but I understand and know that during this period of time, my visits there and the increase in the number of boxes and the size of the boxes related to me putting in my personal effects and documents and other information that related to moving out of my primary residence at the time.
And then why the need to get an extra large box and then the need to get an extra large box?
Well, Mr. Chair, again, I will come back to the point of saying that it would be as it relates to the moving out process.
So this evidence you didn't give previously. It relates to the moving out process.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
I mean, previously you said there are 4 boxes and they're easy to explain. It's one for each of the family members.
Well, Mr. Chair, as I said to you previously, these matters are private and confidential matters, Mr. Chair. But yes, I didn't explain it before.
No, but Mr. Singh, if the need to acquire boxes had something to do with you having to take some personal items that had been kept in your house, which you decided to put in at Knoxvold, you would not have needed to explain anything. You simply have said, I made a decision to put in some items at Knoxvold that I had kept in the house.
But Mr. Chair, that was the line of my responses when I was here the previous occasion. Now I'm presented with substantially more information relating to the nature, the extent, and the timing of my transactions with Knox. So I'm offering you an explanation relating to the information that's presented to me today.
Mr. Maybeck?
Yes, thank you. Could I ask you please to go to page 1759?
317.
What you will see, and I think you gave this evidence... 1759.
Yeah.
So just give me 1 second to put this page back.
I'm going to come back to that highlighted document. Now, you gave evidence last time, and it's borne out by this page, that the width and the depth of all of your boxes were the same. So you'll see if you look at small all the way through to extra large, the width and the depth is the same. 241 millimeters in width, and the depth 445 millimeters. So width of about 24 and depth of 45.5. Correct?
That is correct.
The only difference was in the height. So the small box was very short, and so it goes from 88 to 110 to 133, 260 for an extra large, and then an extra large 520. Do you see that?
That is correct.
So if you could just have a look at one of these file boxes here, Mr. Singh, that I've put up. A file box in width is 29 centimeters. These bolts of yours were 5 centimeters narrower than that. A file box is also 45 centimeters in depth. So all we have to work out is what really would the cumulative height been of the boxes that you rented. Well, we know that you had 5 larges, and that which was 30 centimeters, and that you had 1 extra large and another extra large. When I've added that up, the total height would have been about 160 centimeters, which would be the equivalent of 5 file boxes. So if you look from here, this is 3, you can put another 2 on top of that. It would be really the area, roughly, that you rented. See that?
There's 40.
So I'm looking from here.
Oh,
1, 2, 3, I can't put another 2 there, it's too high, I can't put. So it would be 5. You get a sense then of how much space it was. Just to give you an example, although these are a little broader, you can, as you know, store 5 lever arch files in each one of these boxes. So in 5, you can store 25 lever arch files, and you can store 500 pages in a lever arch file, as you would know, 12,500 pages. It's a lot of space. You can get a lot of things in there, not so?
that is correct.
I
Last
wonder,
time-
Mr. Maybeck, whether it's not necessary for the record just to indicate what the size of each file is in terms of height, so that when you when somebody reads the record and you say 5 files, they have an idea how high they would go.
Yes.
Or if you have got the number ready, you just read it into the record.
I have done a rough calculation. Let me,
Yeah.
perhaps during the break, I'll make sure that it's completely accurate. And I'll also give Mr. Singh's
Yeah.
legal representative opportunity to confirm it.
No, that's fine. Just that sometimes one forgets these things because one is seeing
Certainly.
that somebody's reading the record without this and has no idea how high the fines were. Okay, all right.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Singh, last time we spoke about how much this was costing you. What we've seen is that a large box cost about 4,000 Rand a year, an extra large one about 5,000, and an extra large one, I think in the region of 10. So in my calculations, this was costing you about 35,000 Rand a year. That accord roughly with your recollection and studying of these documents.
I would take it as correct.
And all of that money you paid here in cash, where did you get that cash from, incidentally?
Mr. Chair, as I've testified, the boxes also contained around 200,000 Rand in cash. So that was the cash that I
Sorry,
used.
just repeat that sentence, please.
I said, as I've testified before, the boxes did contain cash. I used some of that cash to pay for these boxes. And I also obviously replenished that cash from time to time.
Now, Mr. Peter, when he took over from you as the Group Chief Financial Officer, do you know that he also, him and or his mother, acquired boxes at Knoxville?
I did not know that.
In fact, he and or his mother had 7 large boxes there, similar number to you. I assume you can't comment or you would ascribe that to a coincidence.
I cannot comment.
Now, if I could take you back to this page 1757 with my annotations. If you have a look in the middle column, that box that I've done in the middle, running from 18 July 2014 up until 20 August 2015. All of those days, except for one, was a weekday. The day that was on the weekend, as I have it, is the 11th of October 2014. Perhaps you could just mark that. The rest of the days were all during the week. So there are 9 days then that fall within that range, weekdays. What I wanted to put to you, Mr. Singh, is what I don't follow is this. Your own evidence, and you've confirmed Witness 3's statement when Witness 3 says how things would work on a normal working day is I would go and I would collect Mr. Singh at his home. Where was that? Is in the Midrand.
Yes.
And I would take him to the Carlton Centre and I would drive him around the whole day and then I would take him back home. And you worked, seems, long hours. So, seeing that you went to Knox Vault during this period, 9 times during the week, surely Witness 3 must have taken you there. Who else could have taken you there?
Mr. Chair, also by my own testimony and by testimony of Witness 3, he also testified that my personal vehicle was parked at the basement of the Transnet offices during the week. And that is the vehicle that I would have used to visit Knox Vaults during the period of these days that would appear to be during the week.
Sorry, Mr. Singh, I thought you might say that, but that's not what the evidence reflects. The evidence reflects, because you remember this arose in the context of the Three Rivers and the maroon bag of cash. And the evidence that was given, you confirmed this, is that occasionally what you would do is you would drive your blue M3 BMW to the Carlton Centre on a Monday. It would stay there in the basement, might be washed on a Friday, and then you would drive it home. Not all the time, occasionally. No evidence has been given in these proceedings that you ever, during the week, drove yourself anywhere. In fact, you confirmed witness 3's evidence.
Mr. Chair, I'm at a loss in terms of responding to this, because
Well, before you respond, I must just tell you that my recollection too is that you said that you would drive yourself during the weekends, which I understood to confirm that, generally speaking, I wouldn't say there would be no exception, but generally speaking, during the week, when it's during working hours, you would be driven by your driver.
but that's my point, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, as you had said, 9 times in a period of a year is generally speaking that I may have also driven myself.
So, you mean you...
Okay, let me put it to you this way, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Had I known that I needed to declare that I had driven myself occasionally during the week at the time, I would have said so.
Yeah.
Because, Mr. Chair, when I was confirming witness 3's statement, it was done on the basis that generally that's what happened.
So is your version that generally when you would allow your driver to drive you to different places, but when it came to going to Knox Vault, you would make sure that it didn't drive you there, you would drive yourself there?
That is correct.
So you say, because this is an 8-month period, you say that in that 8-month period, you drove yourself there 9 times during a normal business day.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And you see the times
I do see.
opposite 18 July 2014, 2 o'clock, then 1 o'clock, 11 o'clock, right in the middle of the business day, correct?
That is correct.
Why didn't you want your driver to know that you had reason to go to Knox Vault?
Mr. Chair, I think I did testify previously that these were personal matters, and from my perspective, I didn't really want him to be part of these matters.
Well,
So
he was not going to see what was in the box. He would just drive you there, that's all, and remain in the car. There was nothing, he was not going to go any personal matters other than that you had some business to do at Knox Vault. Why didn't you want him to know that you had some business to do at Knox Vault?
Well, Mr. Chair, as I said, it was a personal decision that I made at the time.
What would you say to the proposition that you may have, you might not have wanted him to see that because you had something to hide about your visits to Knox Vault?
Well, Mr. Chair, I don't know if you're asking me to speculate.
No, I'm saying if that proposition is put, what do you say? Because remember, his version is he would drive you to the Gupta residence, he would get cash there, and then he would drive you to Northvolt, where you would take that cash. Now, from what he said, it doesn't appear that that would be legitimate cash. So I asked the question, if that was not legitimate cash, maybe that might have been the reason why you would have, on your version, decided that whenever you went there, you didn't want him to know. That is assuming your version is true.
No, Mr. Chair, that's not the reason.
What's the reason?
Mr. Chair, as I said, it was personal matters that I decided to deal with on my own.
Yeah.
And that was the reason.
Mr. Maibek?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Singh, can I ask you please to pick out Exhibit BB14D?
Have you got the page number, Mr. Maibek?
Yes, if I could ask you please to turn to page 127. You go to page 127.
So, 127,
Yes. The numbers are on the right-hand side.
the red numbers.
No, there's only black numbers on this if we're in the same file.
Chairperson, sorry to interrupt. We're just trying to establish, at this stage, my attorney and myself, if this bundle was in fact emailed to us and when it was, so that we can follow the evidence. Or maybe my learned friend can assist us just with the date on which this bundle was mailed to us, so that we can
Well,
ensure that
I
we've
don't
got
know
it in
when it
front
was
of us.
mailed to my learned friend, but of course she did have it because this is witness 3's affidavit that Mr. Singh was examined on extensively
Yeah,
at the last sitting.
I think that should help her.
That helps us.
Yeah.
So this file only has red numbers. So
All
we're
right.
doing
Do you
127.
have can I ask you to go to page 127? Is
That's
that
of the red
Mr.
number.
Okay, well, if it's the red number, fine.
That's right.
Is that a page from witness 3's affidavit with a heading in the middle, CPO services to Anoj Singh?
That is correct.
All right. Now, could I take you, please, to paragraph 31? On a normal working day, I used to pick Mr. Singh up at his home in the morning at around 6:30 in Wendywood, and from there drive him to the Colton Centre. After work, I would drop him off at his home again. You confirmed that in your earlier testimony, correct?
That is correct.
Next paragraph 32, during the course of the day, I would drive him to meetings or to whichever destination he would instruct me. You see that?
That is correct.
You confirmed that last time, correct?
If you say so. I don't
And
recall.
then if you go
exactly.
over the page to 128, at 36, paragraph 36, in instances, Singh would drive to the office with his private vehicle, a blue BMW M3, on Monday mornings, and on Friday afternoons, he would travel home with his vehicle. the vehicle would be parked in the basement of the Colton Centre during the week. You confirmed that.
That is
And in fact, you confirmed that on another occasion, in dealing with the Three Rivers Lodge. You recall that?
I do, sir.
It certainly doesn't appear from this and from your confirmation of these paragraphs that you drove yourself during.
Chairperson, before my learned friend continues, with the greatest of respect to him, what he's trying to put doesn't exclude what the witness gave evidence. So what Mr. Singh's version is, that he occasionally used his own vehicle to do certain things, is not excluded by what the witness said.
Well, let Mr. Mybeck put the question, let Mr. Singh answer, and we take it from there.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Well, perhaps I could put it most easily this way. Mr. Singh, when you confirmed these paragraphs in your evidence, you made no reference to the fact that you would occasionally drive yourself. Correct?
That is correct, Mr.
Yeah.
But that was on the basis, Mr. Chair, that we were talking about generally.
Mr. Singh, I'm
Mr. Singh. If the position was that sometimes you did drive yourself during the week, surely you would have said so. Because otherwise the statement that during the week he would drive you around and your car would be parked the whole week in the basement, and you take it on Friday to home and come back with it on Monday, would not be correct. You understand?
I take your point, Mr. Chair.
Yes, okay, all right.
All right, and then there's just two last questions that I want to ask you with reference to my handwritten annotations.
Before we move off the dates, can we ask exactly what dates were these?
What days of the week?
Yes.
We can do that. What I asked one of my team members to do yesterday was to determine if any of these days fell within the weekend. And what I was advised is that the only weekend day was the 11th of October, 2014.
Okay. It would be interesting to see the rest of the days.
I beg your pardon?
I said it would be interesting to see what the rest of the days would look like.
I think the witness, Mr. Singh and Mr. Mybeck, is speaking at cross purposes about what Mr. Singh is referring to as what days.
Yes, were you, Mr. Singh, wanting to know which of these days would be Monday or Tuesday
Yes.
or Wednesday?
Yes.
Not just whether it's a weekday or a weekend.
That would
Not
be
just
correct.
that.
Yes.
Okay, so or you wanted to know that plus whether it was a Tuesday or Monday or Wednesday or Thursday as well.
I think, Mr. Chair, just the days of the week would be sufficient.
Yeah, what day each one is.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Well, maybe one should ask why would that matter?
Mr.
Because
Chair.
we know that Mr. Mybeck asked you the questions because the evidence was that during the week your car would be parked at the basement and the driver would drive you to meetings and drive you around. Why would knowing which day of the week each date is be important or relevant?
Well, Mr. Chair, so my version is, no matter which day of the week it was, I drove to the vault.
Yeah.
On witnesses 3's version and based on the evidence that I laid before, you are saying that it would have not been probable that on a weekday I would have driven myself. So a weekday also is a Monday and is also a Friday. which meant I had access to my car on a Monday and a Friday, based on the version that we had just discussed.
Oh, okay.
So if it is on a Monday and a Friday,
Yes.
then it concurs with, let's call it the evidence of witness
About the car
The
only
car.
being used on
on a Monday or a Friday.
Yes. Well, no, I understand what you say, but except that my recollection is that the dates that appear at page 1757, the information that appears there shows that it was during the day as opposed to after hours or too early in the morning. So it would have been during the time when, on witness 3's version, the car was parked. So I understand you to be suggesting that, look, witness 3 says on Fridays I'll take the car home.
But Mr. Chair, equally, there could be many reasons as to why I could either be leaving the office early, I had gone out for, okay, I can't say I went out for lunch because on his version I never went out for lunch without him. I always went out with him. So equally so, Mr. Chair, I could have been leaving the office early, let's say at 14:26, for example, if it was a Friday, I could have been leaving the office early. Or if it was on a Monday, for example, and it was
If you were leaving early,
10:55. If it was 10:55 on a Monday, I could equally be coming late to the office. Or I could have had meetings and then was coming to the office. So those are plausible explanations as well.
Just
Mr.
as I
Mybeck.
understand, as I understand your evidence, on a Monday, you would go to work. I mean, you seem to work long hours.
That's
In fact, witness 3 says that he fetched you at, 6:30 in the morning.
around that.
And he would take you back home, and often that would be at 10 o'clock or even later.
And not, well,
Or sometimes, I beg your pardon. When would you usually get home on a normal working day?
on a normal working day, probably around 7.
7. So basically you work on duty from 7 to 7.
That's generally.
And as I understood your evidence, on a Monday you wouldn't get a late start. You would drive your own car occasionally to work. Presumably you left about the same time.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you, sir.
Sorry?
I said I couldn't hear you there.
As I understood the evidence, if you decided to take your BMW to work on a Monday, presumably you would leave at the same time. There'd be no reason to go to work late.
Unless there was a meeting or
Yeah.
unless they had a personal commitment or...
Sure. And then, of course, the same thing applies when you drove back. Just because you're driving your own car wouldn't mean that you would leave early. You would see out the business day in the ordinary course, correct?
That would be correct.
All right. Now, your earlier testimony also gave rise to the need to get a further affidavit from witness 3. Could I ask you please to go to page 1919?
Oh, which one?
It is bundle 5C.
Chairperson, we again want to place on record. I understand what my learned friend says, that these documents, but we're working off bundles that's disclosed to us. We come here and we would like to follow the evidence based on bundles that were disclosed. That's why my attorney, through the course of the week and even last week, said, please forward us the reference bundles. It's not good enough to say, oh, but we sent you an email with a witness's statement. We'd like to follow the evidence so that we know what's happening with reference to a reference bundle.
well, I don't know what Mr. Mybeck has to say, but I do know that evidence leaders, when certain witnesses come here, they bring lots of files belonging to that work stream, even when they might not necessarily need some, but just to have them at hand. Mr. Mybeck, do you want to say anything?
Well, I do know that my learned friend has received an electronic copy of Exhibit 23. It may be that when I refer to 5B or 5C, it's not easy for her to make that delineation, but I'm referring to page 1919 of Exhibit 23. Mr. Singh, are you there?
I am, sir.
Did you say 1919?
Yes. And that, DCJ, is in your bundle 5C.
Okay.
So if we go to paragraph 5 at page 1920, witness 3 says, in summary, Mr. Singh probed the testimony relating to me having identified Mr. Mashera Koko and Ms. Linda Mabasu at the Gupta residence in Saxonwell during the period July 2013 to December 2013, whilst I was seconded to the former minister, Mr. Malusi Gigaba, during his tenure at the Department of Public Enterprises. Mr. Singh states that I recognized Ms. Koko and Ms. Mbasu in 2013, whilst they were not public figures, and contends that to be an anomaly in my evidence. Witness 3 goes on, I wish to clarify the misunderstanding that is seemingly being created by Mr. Singh in this regard. During my tenure as Close Protection Officer to Mr. Gigaba during the period July 2013 to December 2013, I did not know who Mr. Koko and Ms. Mabasu were at the time. Further, my evidence has not been that I knew who these individuals were in 2013. I only became aware of who they are at a later stage, and at that point in time when I saw these individuals, I recalled that I had seen them on previous occasions, and that this was during my tenure on the secondment at the DPE whilst we were at the Gupta residence with Mr. Gigaba. Paragraph 8. At the time when my secondment at the DPE came to an end, I returned to Transnet, where I was redeployed as a security manager at Transnet offices in Carlton Centre in January 2014. July 2014, I was assigned to the office of the Group Chief Financial Officer to perform driver and close protection officer duties until the end of February 2019. During my tenure as a close protection officer in the office of the GCFO, which is located in the executive floor of Transnet, I came to know of a number of individuals either within Transnet or who would frequent Transnet's offices. Further, during the course and scope of my duties as a close protection officer, I was exposed to a number of individuals who may be regarded as high-profile individuals. Paragraph 9. Regarding Mr. Koko, I confirm that I did not know who he is when I saw him at the Gupta residence in 2013. I only began to know Mr. Koko. I only began to know who Mr. Koko is when Mr. Singh was seconded to Eskom during on or about July or August 2015. I provided close protection and driver services to Mr. Singh during his secondment at Eskom for a period of approximately 2 months. It was during this period when I saw Mr. Koko at Eskom, and I recalled that I'd seen him on a previous occasion in 2013 at the Gupta residence in Saxonwell during my secondment. 10. Regarding Ms. Mbaso, I confirm that I did not know who she is when I saw her at the Gupta residence in 2013. When she was appointed as chairperson of Transnet in December 2014, I recognized her as someone I had seen before. I recalled that I had seen her on a previous occasion in 2013 at the Gupta residence in Saxonwell during my secondment at the DP. Paragraph 11, I hope the above clarifies this aspect of my evidence before this Honourable Commission, which evidence I maintain is, to the best of my knowledge, true and correct. Do you have any comment on that?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, this was requested in terms of clarification based on, as Mr. Mybeck has said, relating to a anomaly that I had raised in witness three's evidence. And I would want to say that, Mr. Chair, the response seeks to amplify the anomaly rather than clarify, in my view, in that witness 3 now confirms that he had not known either of these individuals in 2013, who they were in 2013, yet recognizing them a year and maybe 2 years later, having seen them once, he immediately recognizes them as the same individuals that he had seen once at the Gupta residence. And I submit, Mr. Chair, that that is highly improbable. I mean, in my case, Mr. Chair, I don't probably remember people that I saw a week ago. And yet, witness 3 has the ability to remember people that he's not even spoken to on one occasion, but just seen on one occasion, but recall them a year to 2 years later.
All right. Anything else?
No, sir.
Seems a fair point to make, Mr. Singh.
Thank you.
I want to turn to another topic, and that's your Dubai travel, personal, private travel. Now, I certainly don't intend to retraverse in any detail the ground that was traversed with you before by my colleague Mr. Seleka in the Eskom stream. But I just wanted to ask you one or two questions, and that is about that before I get on to what I want to deal with. Travel excellence. Do you dispute that it was the travel agent used by Mr. Essa and Sahara Computers?
Chairperson, I'm going to object. My learned friend, if he says that Mr. Singh disputes that, he needs to refer to the evidence where he disputed that.
No, he is asking whether he disputes it.
Mr. Chair, I cannot. It's not within my personal knowledge to know whether Mr. Essa or Sahara used it.
Yes.
And how is it that you came to use this particular travel agent? I mean, what we know is it's a small, one-woman show really, that was then joined, Ms. Suleiman joined them. How is it that you picked this travel agent? It's just...
Mr. Chair, as I think I testified before, before the commission, I don't exactly recall how I ended up with them. So that was my testimony at the time, Mr.
So insofar as it's found that Ms. Suleiman's evidence is accepted, that she was Mr. S's travel agent, she was Sahara Computers travel agent, your evidence is just coincidental that you happened to land up at the same travel agent.
That is correct, sir.
And you can't tell us how that came about.
No, sir.
Now, do you dispute Ms. Suleiman's evidence that your flights were allocated to Mr. S's account?
Yes, sir.
You do dispute that?
Yes.
Did you have yourself any credit facility at Travel Excellence?
Well, Mr. Chair, based on the testimony that we provided previously, I was of the view that I was booking tickets on my own, which I then paid for on my own. I had no recollection or association with the fact that the accounting and administration function of Travel Excellence was, in fact, allocating my tickets to Mr. Esa's account.
Well, maybe I should ask this question in response to Mr. Maibek's question whether you disputed that Travel Excellence would allocate your bookings to Mr. Salim Esa's account. You said yes, you would dispute that. I'm not sure whether you truly want to dispute that, simply because what he is talking about, Mr. Maibek, is the evidence from the two people from, well, the one person from Travel Excellence who was internally at Travel Excellence. This is what we used to do. So now you didn't work for Travel Excellence. How would you know that that's not how they did it?
From that perspective, Mr. Chair, I accept that.
You can't dispute that. All you might be able to say is, as far as you are concerned, they had no reason to do that.
That is correct.
But that they factually did that, you can't dispute.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Maibek?
Yes, thank you, because her evidence was that she considered Mr. Essa to be the guarantor of your ticket. I think in line with what the DCJ has asked you, you would say, well, I can't dispute that.
Chairperson, sorry, I don't want to interrupt Mr. Maibert, but he's
Yes.
just indicated that her evidence was, and I don't recall that she gave evidence. Or is he referring to the content of her statement?
I think he is referring to the contents of the affidavit, because obviously the contents of an affidavit is evidence. It's just evidence on affidavit. I think that's what
Yes.
he means. Yeah.
Because on the last occasion, we were made aware that the witness might be called. I just wanted
Yeah.
to ensure that the
Yes.
witness hasn't been called
Yes.
in the interim, and we were
No.
not given notice of it.
No, she has not been called in the meantime. Yeah.
Yes, well, Mr. Singh, did you have the question?
Sorry.
Her evidence, her affidavit reflects that she considered Mr. Essa to be the guarantor of your tickets.
That is correct.
You can't dispute that, but you say certainly I was, as far as I'm concerned, I was transacting with them completely independently.
That is correct.
So I would like to just hand up a schedule, if I may. This one is slightly better arranged than the previous one, Chairperson, which I'd like to use as a roadmap for my examination of Mr. Singh. There's a lot of cross-referring, and documents are in different places. This would make things easier. I don't suggest that it has any evidentiary weight. It's simply
Yes.
a means to
Just for
examination.
convenience. Okay.
I want to, perhaps I can just explain this document, Mr. Singh, and if you have any questions, please ask me. I've listed 6 trips which I want to question you on. And if we take the first trip, 30 April to 2 May 2014, in brackets BB23, page 26, para 113.3, that is the reference to the 10.6. You'll remember in the 10.6 you were asked to answer about various trips.
I'm sorry, Mr. Maibek. I was looking at the document you've just handed up.
Yes.
On the file, should we go to a particular page?
I haven't gone to
Not
any
yet.
page yet.
Okay.
Chairperson, maybe it would be convenient if the witness is referred to his actual affidavit that collates with the 10-6, because it would be easier for all of us to follow.
Yeah,
Okay, that's fine.
I'll get there. I'm just explaining what it deals with. So 30 April to 2 May, BB 23, page 426, paragraph 113.3, that was the reference in the 10-6. And then page 480, paras 52 to 53, that's your answer. In the column present or flew with, that's the allegation made in the 10-6, that present in Dubai at this time with Gupta and Essa. Where Ms. Suleiman affidavit deals with the trip, I've paraphrased what she says. And then in the next column, AS, those are your initials, I've paraphrased what your response was. And then really it takes me to what I'm going to ask you about, and that is documents in BB 23. So I'm really trying to tie the documents to each of the trips. So I'm going to deal with the 30 April to 2 May 2014 trip, then the 3 June to 8 May trip, 7 to 12 August trip, 6 to 9 November trip, 25 February to 1 March trip, and 11 to 15 June trip. Now, what I want to just ask you, as I understood your evidence that you gave when you were examined, when Mr. Seleka was leading you, as I understand it, you say that all of these trips, but for number 2, were private and personal trips. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, Mr. Seleka didn't press you on that, but I want to ask you, I mean, what do you mean that they were private and personal trips? What is it that you were doing there? And are we talking about trips
Well,
one?
I think just to be accurate, I think he did ask him the same question at some stage or another. Say, please clarify
All right.
private and personal, but I think you
Well,
can...
DCJ, you would have a...
Chairperson, maybe just again for the record, at the time when Mr. Seleka left it there, Mr. Singh made it clear that it is private what his business was there, so that it's just clear for the record.
Oh, yeah,
And it was,
maybe Mr. Mybeck means that the mere fact that Mr. Singh said it's private shouldn't end the questioning.
Yes.
So I think, yeah, you may proceed, Mr. Mybeck.
Thank you. I want to know, my question simply is, what were you doing there?
Sorry, sir.
What were you doing there?
I was on private business, sir.
Private business. What business?
Mr. Chair, these were private trips that I was engaged on to either holidays or vacations in some cases.
Sorry?
Holidays or vacations in some cases.
Private business and holidays are different things, Mr. Singh.
You asked
I
me-
need to, and I'd like you to be, we need to be clear here. What is it that you were doing? You said that trips 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 were private and personal trips. They weren't business trips. Now what I want to know, what were you doing there?
So let me clarify, Mr. Chair. When I say they were not business trips, Mr. Chair, they were not business trips as it relates to official travel for Transnet purpose. So they were private in that sense. So does that...
Fine, that I understand. Now I want to know, what were you doing there? So, I mean, it's not a difficult question. It's private, yes, I was on holiday. It was private, I went and rode a mountain bike race, or I played golf. What is it that you were doing there?
So then your subsequent question, you asked what were you doing, and I then responded and said, I was there on private, as I said, I was there on private and it was my private travel. And you asked what did I do, and then I said at some stages I was there for vacation.
Yes,
So
a holiday,
on a holiday.
right?
Okay. On some occasions, I was there to how can I say, expand my personal network within the UAE in terms of
Expand?
my own ability to, so it was my own private business.
I don't understand.
So, Mr. Chair, these line of questioning was put to me in the parliamentary inquiry. And at that stage, Mr. Chair, I explained to the parliamentary inquiry that at that stage, I was engaging with a UAE individual, and we had common business objectives at the time. And he sought advice, and I sought advice, and we mutually collaborated. And that was the reasons for these trips.
So you were undertaking these trips because there was an individual in Dubai with whom you were exploring business opportunities.
That is correct.
So who's this individual?
Mr. Chair, I disclosed the name of the individual, the parliamentary inquiry. His name was Mr. Al-Balushi.
Sorry?
Mr. Al-Balushi.
You want to spell that for us?
A-L-B, if I'm correct, A-L-B-U-L-A-S-H-I.
A-L-B-U-L-S-H-I.
L-S-H-I. That's correct.
Is that the surname or name?
That's his surname.
Okay, have you got the name?
Mr. Chair, I'll have to check my records and
Yes.
provide that to you.
Okay. Or the initials, you remember the initials maybe?
No, sir. I think it was M, sir.
M.
M.
Okay.
So who did Mr. Al-Balushi work for?
Mr. Chair, he's a private citizen. He has his own business interests.
So when you were expanding your network, as you put it, in the UAE, did it extend beyond Mr. Al-Balushi? You have meetings with other people, or how did you extend this network of yours?
Mr. Chair, as it relates to the these trips, case in point, to the extent that it would require for Mr. Al-Balushi and myself to meet other individuals, that would have been facilitated through him, and we would then meet them, yes, Mr. Chair.
All right. So you met other individuals.
Yes.
You were looking for business opportunity.
Well, Mr. Chair, in my case, it was a case of trying to understand what would I do once I've completed my stint as the CFO of Transnet. And it was always my intention that I would look at immigrating from the country in some way, shape, or form, in terms of being able to take up some sort of opportunity within the global environment.
Now, did you ever have occasion to open a bank account in the UAE?
No, sir.
Did you ever have occasion to purchase any property in the UAE?
No, sir.
Now, what we do see is that in the space of little over 13 and a half months, 30 April 2014, June 2015, you frequented Dubai often, correct?
Correct, sir.
Now, perhaps just dealing with this private and personal issue. Trip number 2, the 3 June to 8 June.
That is correct.
I understood your evidence. I'm going to go into the detail in a moment, but I understood your evidence to say, look, you seem to have, you weren't in Dubai the whole time you were there. You flew to Frankfurt and Heathrow, and then for a period of time you were in Dubai.
That is correct.
Would that time that you were in Dubai, would that also have been a private and personal trip?
No, sir.
Was that a business trip?
This was a business trip. This was an official business.
This number 2 is an official throughout business trip. All right. So let's have a look at the first private trip on 30 April Then 3 months later, you go again on the 7th of August. Three months later, you go again, 6th of November.
Mr. Chair, maybe it is opportune at this time while Mr. Myberg is talking about the trip of the 7th of August, which is trip 3. Mr. Chair, my previous testimony was that I confirmed this trip based on the evidence that had been provided by Ms. Suleiman. On return home, Mr. Chair, the family had actually indicated to me that I would have probably not been, we actually didn't do this trip. Because there was
Is that the April one
no, sir, item 3 on the table,
or August?
August 7 to 12. And the reason for that, Mr. Chair, was that there was actually a bereavement in the family. And the bereavement occurred on the 1st of August. There was a ceremony on the 4th of August, I think, and then there was a final cremation on the 6th of August. So these dates, Mr. Chair, are problematic in terms of the fact that I did confirm them. However, I actually didn't fly. So we actually didn't attend this.
So you say that you certainly did not travel to do that trip?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, so we're at November. What we do know is you then go 3 months later, 4 months later, you go in February. And then a few months after that, you go again in June. So you went there quite often. Right?
Sorry, sir?
You went to Dubai often.
Yes.
Now let's take the first trip. You accept that you went on it. You said that you were unaware of the presence of
Rajesh Gupta and
Mr. R.
Salim
Gupta
Essa.
and Mr. Essa. Could I ask you please, and I really just want to take you through the documents listed in the right-hand column. Could I ask you to go to page 1949? Exhibit 23, bundle 5C. Now, at 1949 through to 1954, there are a series of documents that fall within this date range of your trip, 30 April to 2 May. Could I ask you to go to 1949? You see there's an email on the face of it from Ashu. You know who Ashu is?
Mr. Chair, if this is Mr. Ashu as I've testified before, Mr. Ashu Chawla, then I did testify that I had an occasion to meet him.
The Ashu Chawla, you knew him as working at Sahara.
That is correct.
In what position did you know he held there?
I think he was a CEO or something of the company.
The CEO. And did you know that he worked in Sahara's offices in Johannesburg?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Singh, I can look up your evidence, but when I asked you previously about Sahara and who worked there, wasn't it your evidence that you didn't know, that you assumed that the Guptas, some of the Gupta brothers worked there? Did you always know that Mr. Chawla worked at Sahara's offices in Johannesburg?
Mr. Chair, I don't recall when I got to meet Mr. Chawla, but the reason why I responded to the question of whether I knew him or not was Mr. Seleka was going through this long list of individuals, and that's when I recognized the name, and Mr. Seleka then asked, how did you know him? And then I said, well, I met him at the functions at the Gupta residence.
All right, now when you went to Dubai, in what hotel would you stay?
Mr. Chair, normally at the Oberoi Hotel.
So you see that this is an email from Mr. Chawla to Tony Gupta, and he's forwarding something from that hotel, the Oberoi Hotel. It says charge slips PDF, Mr. Essa, Mr. Gupta, Mr. Singh. Do you see that?
That is correct.
And then over the page, one sees a series of charge slips.
I see that, Mr. Chair.
If you go to page 1951, you get an invoice. It's addressed to Mr. Essa. The right-hand side says that reflects an arrival on the 29th of April and a departure on the 1st of May. And you will see that on the face of this document, that invoice was settled using a MasterCard ending 9115. Do you see that?
That is correct.
And then over the page at 1952, you have on the face of it an invoice, this time in the name of Mr. Rajesh Gupta, also arriving 29, leaving 1 May. And that invoice appears at 1953 to have been settled also using this MasterCard 9115. Do you see that? At page 1953.
That is correct.
But if we go to page 19...
Chairperson, before my learned friend continue, I would like him to place on record these documents that he's currently referring to. Is it documents that were obtained by the investigators, or is it in fact documents that was obtained through the Gupta leaks? Because that impacts on the veracity of the documents.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. These documents were sourced from Relativity, which, as you know, is the Commission's really database of all documentation. To my learned friend's point, I am advised that these are part of the Gupta leaked documents. What you would know, Chairperson, is that there is a project within the Commission to seek to authenticate the Gupta leaked documents, and that there are experts working on that. I understand that that is a project that is headed up by a lady named Anamar Niman, and the intention is to establish the authenticity of these documents.
Yes, no, I'm aware of that. That is still to be done.
Chairperson, just to confirm, none of these documents has as yet been verified. There's no metadata to verify the authenticity of it. It's not been verified by doing investigations in Dubai, as an example. My learned friend is using it as it is, or as it was obtained through the Gupta leaks.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Singh, then at 1954, there's reference to to, it appears, another invoice, Rajesh Gupta. And then you will see in the middle, accommodation charge. And there's reference to you, and on the face of it, there's a charge to Mr. Gupta. Do you see that?
That is correct.
So, on the face of these documents, what you see is that not only were Mr. R. Gupta and Mr. Essa in Dubai, but they were in the same hotel as you on the face of the document. And it would also appear that your accommodation was charged to the account of Rajesh Gupta, at least part of it, and settled. Do you have any comment on this? And then, what we see from the first document at 1949, that certain PDF charge slips were then sent by Mr. Chawla to Tony Gupta. Do you have any comment on these documents?
Mr. Chair, these documents I have not seen before. They have not been provided to us previously. And I think these were the documents that actually came late last night, if I'm not mistaken. Mr. Chair, if we can have leave to examine these documents and provide some comments in due course.
But what I want to ask you is, do you stand by your version that you, because this you've put in an affidavit, you were unaware of the presence of Mr. Gupta and Mr. Essa in Dubai insofar as they were there?
That is correct.
And is it your case that you had no knowledge of them being at the Oberoi Hotel at the same time as you?
No, sir.
Now, and you would say, as I assume you would, that you paid for your own accommodation
That is correct, sir.
at the Oberoi.
That is correct, sir.
And have you got any proof of that? Do you have any documentation?
No, Mr. Chair, I do not.
Would you have paid in cash?
That is correct.
Now, these networking meetings that you had in Dubai, did they ever include any of the Guptas and Mr. Essa?
No, sir.
Did they ever include Mr. Chawla?
No, sir.
All right, then let's go to the second trip. This is 3 June to 8 June. This is my schedule.
Sorry, sir, for the record as well, Mr. Chair. If you look at as we placed on record, Mr. Chair, the veracity and obviously integrity of these documents are in question and obviously are being checked. Just to also point out that the thing that is referred to here is an ANUJ.
What page are you looking at?
Sorry, 1954, Mr. Chair.
954. Yes, okay, just repeat the point you're making.
So I'm saying that the thing that is referred to in this information invoice is an ANUJ thing,
Yes,
not an ANOJ thing.
okay.
I assume that's a mistake that is often made in the spelling of your name.
Well, Mr. Chair, if you look at the way that the hotel protocols normally work, you are required to produce your either proof of identification before you actually are allowed to take up your room. And that international travel is normally required for you to produce your passport. And if your passport doesn't accord to the reservation that you have, then you have a bit of a problem. So in this case, this is not as simple explained away as it's a U versus an O. I think it's a bit more problematic than that.
Are you already saying this is not a reference to you, or are you saying, no, I'm not necessarily saying it's not a reference to me, but it may be that it's somebody else?
No, Mr. Chair.
Which one are you saying?
Mr. Chair, in the light of, this is what I'm saying, in the light of the fact that the veracity of these invoices are questioned, Mr. Chair, you cannot assume that this is me. And I'm saying this is not me.
So you are saying this is not you?
No, sir. Because ANUJ is not ANOJ.
Mr. Mybeck?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Singh. So let's go to the second trip on my schedule. This one you say is business. 3 June to 8 June. It was alleged in the 10-6 that you flew together with Mr. R. Gupta. And my paraphrasing of the evidence, and you must correct me if I'm wrong, this is not intended to have any evidentiary weight. As I understood your evidence, is that you travelled to Frankfurt and Heathrow between 4 and 6 June, and you were in Dubai between 6 and 8. You say it was a business trip. You were unaware that Mr. R. Gupta was on the flight, and then you disputed with Suleiman's version. I don't want to test you on that. Would that accurately summarize, at least
That is correct.
broadly, what your evidence was?
That is correct.
All right. Could we please go then to page 1955 of the same bundle? There's a series of documents within this date range running from 1555 to 1962.
Chairperson, just for the record, is the situation pertaining to these emails similar as to what was stated earlier, i.e. the emails that is not related, or these emails, so we've got invoices and we've got emails. Are the emails also emails that were obtained from the Gupta leaks?
Yes, they are. All right, so we're at 1955, and we need, of course, to read these emails backwards. If you go to the foot of that page, in fact, if you go to 1956, you see it signed by Ashu. When I say signed, he's the author. So it's from Ashu. It's to Sarah Benhoven, which I understand is someone from the hotel. Hi, Sarah, as discussed, I'd like to book a luxury suite on below dates. Check-in 6, check-out 9, guest name, Anoj Singh. You see that?
That is correct.
And then further up, again from Sarah to Ashu. Great speaking to you just now. Please find attached confirmation letter for Mr. Singh. I'm also resending the confirmation letter for Mr. Gupta. See that?
That is correct.
Then if we go to page 1957, you'll see that the Gupta in question appears to have been Mr. Rajesh Gupta. You see that?
That is correct.
There's a reservation for him, arriving 6, leaving 9. And he was in a presidential suite. See that?
Correct.
If you go to page 1959, this, on the face of it, is your reservation. You are arriving, as you've said to us, on the 6th of June, you're departing on the 9th of June, and you were in a luxury suite. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Did you, in fact, stay at the Oberoi Hotel during these, or on these dates?
No, sir.
On what dates did you stay at that hotel?
Mr. Chair, this was an official travel, so this would be the hotel accommodation would have been booked by Transnet. and paid for by Transnet, and whatever hotel that would have appeared to be at the time would have been the hotel that I stayed at.
Sorry?
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
At what hotel did you stay?
So I was explaining that.
Yeah.
And I was explaining to the chair that this was an official trip, so the hotel would have been booked by Transnet and paid for by Transnet.
Yes.
And that's the hotel that I would have stayed at.
Yes, but can you remember what hotel it was?
No, sir.
Oh, do you know that it wasn't Oberoi?
Definitely.
Why?
Because I don't think Transnet used the Oberoi Hotel as
You
one of
don't
their-
think they used?
No.
I see. And then if you go to 1961, so just perhaps let's pause for a moment. What were you officially doing in Dubai between Friday the 6th of June and Monday the 9th of June?
Mr. Chair, I don't exactly recall, but there are a number of reasons as to why one would have been in Dubai. One of the rating agencies that rate both Eskom and Transnet was based in Dubai. Was based in Dubai.
Yeah.
One of the rating agencies. There were there were some investor roadshows that we had done to Dubai during this period of time. I think it was particularly for Transnet, not for Eskom, in terms of exploring the Islamic financing and investor appetite market. There were also reference visits that I think that was arranged by McKinsey in terms of understanding the methods that are used to manage construction projects. Because at that time, Dubai was going through a massive construction boom, and there were a lot of organizations that had adopted different and innovative and thought leadership, project management type of philosophy. And that is what we would have been looking at doing in Dubai. But Mr. Chair, in terms of exactly this trip, I do not recall.
You're not sure?
No.
Okay, and then to finish off these documents, could you go to 1961?
And there, sir.
And there at the top, on the face of it, an email from Mr. Essa to Ashu. And he's forwarding the Oberoi Dubai, Mr. A PDF. See that?
That is correct.
If you go over the page 1962, you see some sort of hotel voucher, it seems. expostay.com. It's to the Oberoi Hotel, arrival date 6, departure date 9, 3 nights. You see that?
I'm just trying to figure out where you are. Okay. Yes, I see that.
All right. And then if we go to the third trip on my schedule from 7 to 12 August, as I
I'm sorry,
understand...
Mr. Mybeck, the page that you are moving away from, was it 1962?
Yes.
Yes. That's an accommodation voucher, is that right? Mr. Singh?
That is correct, sir.
And the reservation on the face of it appears to have been done on the 5th of June 2014, and the arrival date was 6 June 2014, departure date 9 June, and that you were reflected there as the client, and the spelling was the correct spelling of your name.
That is correct.
Yeah. And this was the Oberoi Hotel in Dubai. Okay, all right, Mr.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Matek, yeah.
Then if we go to the third trip on my schedule, that's 7 to 12 August 2014. As I understand it,
What page?
7 to 12 August, Chairperson, 2014. The third trip on my schedule.
Okay, all right, yes. That's the one he says he didn't undertake.
So as I understand it previously, Mr. Singh, and you must correct me if I'm wrong, when Mr. Seleka was examining you, I understood that you accepted that you went on this trip, but you had issues with the invoices and you pointed out a whole lot of discrepancies.
That's good.
If I understand your evidence today, you say that when you returned home and you discussed this with members of your family, you came to the conclusion that actually you were incorrect, that you hadn't engaged on this trip,
That is good.
but you had intended to.
That is correct.
Could I take you, please, to page 1781? Now, that's earlier in the file.
1781. Have I got the page right, Mr. Beck?
Yes, 1781, Chairperson.
I've got.
I want to ask you a few questions in relation to the documents you find at 1781 through to 1784.
1784.
Chairperson, is this in bundle 23? Because we don't have those pages in our bundle.
Is the,
This is Exhibit 23, 1781.
is the bundle that we have been using this morning, 5C. Okay,
So what you find at 1781, perhaps you must start at the bottom. Reservation,
Person, sorry again to interrupt. We don't seem to have that, those documents, and my attorney also says the same. So,
have you got the right bundle?
yes, Chairperson, we've got it online. Well, not online. We've downloaded the reference bundles that were sent to us electronically, and if we go through it, we don't seem to have the.
You don't have page 1781.
No, ours ends at 7.
Yours ends where?
You just bear with me for a second. No, it's, so on this bundle, we've got 1971, but if you look at,
Well, if you've got 1971, you should also have 1781. The page that Mr. Mybeck has referred us to is 1781, and then we go up to 17.
if you can just bear with us for a second, please. So 1719 in BB 23 seems to be a document I just want to go to the start of it. It's Alistair Chabi's submissions to the Commission. Now, 1788, and then it goes to 1789. Chairperson,
What do you have at 1781?
Chairperson, I see it's almost lunchtime. Perhaps this is something that my learned friend and I can sort out
Yes.
and not
Yes.
hold up the Commission.
Okay, all right. Let's just get those things sorted out so when we come back, we can just run smoothly. Okay, we are going to adjourn for lunch and we'll resume at 2. We adjourn.